In our headlines on this Monday, March 23rd, here in South Korea, US President Donald Trump gives Iran 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz or face the destruction of its power plants, but Iran rebukes the warning, threatening instead a potential blackout of the Middle East. Here in South Korea, Gwanghwamun Square glows in purple this past Saturday as K-pop sensation BTS takes the stage for the first time in roughly 4 years with its new album, ARIRANG. Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung stresses the significance of strengthening self-defense as a national priority amid a series of security contingencies. Iran remains defiant in the face of a fresh threat by US President Donald Trump with regard to the Strait of Hormuz. Our Park Jun-han has the latest.
Iran responded to an ultimatum from US President Donald Trump seeking the full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz by saying the key waterway is not fully closed, it's under its control, and is only restricted to hostile and harmful traffic. On Saturday, Trump threatened to obliterate Iranian power plants, starting with the biggest one first, if the strait was not reopened to ships within 48 hours, with over 24 hours having already passed. Tehran also said it would take immediate punitive measures targeting US-owned energy infrastructure in the Middle East in the event of such an attack.
However, if US threats regarding Iran's power plants are carried out, the following punitive measures will be implemented immediately. The Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed and will remain closed until our damaged power plants are restored.
With the war now in its fourth week, Israel is continuing strikes on Iran and its proxies, while Iran has also claimed responsibility for multiple ballistic missile and drone attacks that injured scores of people near an Israeli nuclear research facility, as well as targets in Gulf countries, including the UAE and Kuwait. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Also, the Trump administration is brushing aside concerns over its decision to ease sanctions on Russian and Iranian crude oil in light of soaring global energy prices. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defended Washington's temporary easing of sanctions on Iranian and Russian crude, stressing that the move is aimed at stabilizing oil prices and allowing Asian allies such as Japan and South Korea to buy supplies that would otherwise go to China. Speaking on NBC on Sunday, Bessent dismissed concerns that Iran could earn up to $14 billion in additional revenue, calling the estimate exaggerated. He said the sanctions relief would improve strategic conditions for U.S. partners and help manage short-term volatility in global energy markets. While acknowledging possible short-term price spikes, he argued that they would be manageable if they lead to long-term stability and prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Bessent also addressed President Donald Trump's warning that Iranian power plants could be targeted if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened within 48 hours, saying pressure can be necessary to achieve de-escalation and that operations to weaken Iranian positions are ongoing. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz also warned that President Trump is serious about the threat and suggested strikes could begin with one of Iran's largest power plants, though no target was specified. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and a coalition of 22 countries, including NATO members and partners such as South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, is coordinating with Washington to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and ensure freedom of navigation. Rutte acknowledged Trump's frustration over what he sees as slow Allied action, but said delays were unavoidable as countries prepared without prior knowledge of U.S. operations. Trump has warned NATO would be a paper tiger without U.S. leadership, while Rutte and Washington believe preemptive measures were necessary to enhance global security. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, the local currency and local bourse have been quick to respond to the relentless violence in the Middle East. The won lost greater ground against the US dollar, as did the benchmark Kospi, which plunged over 6%. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the numbers.
The South Korean won closed at 1,517.3 against the US dollar on Monday, finishing above the 1,510 won mark for the first time in 17 years. The depreciation stems from extreme volatility gripping global financial markets following Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and a 48-hour ultimatum issued by US President Donald Trump. International oil prices have surged, leading to investors turning to safe haven assets. In fact, the dollar index climbed back toward the 100 mark. The benchmark KOSPI also took a hit, closing at 5,405.75, down 6.49% from the previous closing. The steep decline prompted authorities to activate a sell sidecar early in the session to temporarily halt program trading. Foreign investors led the exodus, offloading trillions of won in local shares. This resulted in significant losses for top market cap companies, including tech heavyweights Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, as well as Hyundai Motor and LG Energy Solution. However, analysts note this does not reflect a fundamental weakness in the tech sector.
It is difficult to say there is any major damage to semiconductor industry fundamentals or exports. The sell-off is largely driven by a preference for safe assets and securing cash.
Analysts say whether the situation will be prolonged will be decided in the next few days. The nation is now in a complex trilemma. Policymakers are forced to navigate a rapidly depreciating exchange rate, a plunging stock market, and the renewed threat of high inflation from soaring oil prices, which heavily complicates future interest rate decisions.
There is a spreading sentiment that rising inflation will prevent the Fed from cutting rates and could instead lead to a rate hike.
Some analysts suggest the severe market reaction in South Korea is a combination of geopolitical fear and a natural market correction.
The crash is a combination of a necessary correction phase for an overheated market mixed with the ongoing Trump phobia.
To mitigate the economic fallout, the South Korean government and the ruling party are currently drafting a supplementary budget estimated at 25 trillion won. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Kim Jong-un hosted a high-level defense meeting at the Blue House earlier on this Monday and stressed the importance of self-defense amid growing unrest worldwide. Our top office correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung has again underscored the importance of strong self-defense capabilities.
그리고 이 국방은 누구에게도 맡겨서는 안 될 우리 스스로가 완벽하게 최종적으로 책임져야 될 핵심입니다. 우리가 어떤 상황이 처하더라도 누구의 도움도 받지 않고 스스로.
Lee presided over the first Central Integrated Defense Council meeting of his administration at the Blue House on Monday. The council convenes officials from the government, the military, and the civilian sector to assess the country's defense readiness and review key policy outcomes. Under South Korean law, it must meet at least once a year. There, President Lee described self-reliant defense as the key to South Korea's defense system, citing an, quote, increasingly complex and rapidly changing geopolitical environment.
민, 관, 군, 경, 소방 등 모든 방위 요소가 유사시에 한 몸처럼 일사불란하게 대응할 수 있어야 국가와 국민을 지켜낼 수 있습니다.
He called for strengthening preparedness so the country can defend itself under any circumstances, while expressing confidence in South Korea's capabilities. Lee noted that the country's annual defense spending is about 1.4 times North Korea's GDP and that its military strength ranks 5th in the world. The president's remarks come as calls for stronger self-reliant defense have grown in recent months. Following reports that some U.S. forces' Korea assets could be deployed to the Middle East in response to the U.S. war in Iran, Lee previously said that there is no reason to worry about South Korea's defense posture, but stressed the need to be fully prepared to defend itself in worst-case scenarios. Also, the Pentagon's latest national defense strategy states that, quote, South Korea is capable of taking primary responsibility for deterring North Korea with critical but more limited U.S. support. The fact that he personally chaired the meeting, typically led by the Prime Minister, highlights his focus on strengthening an integrated defense system. As the situation in the Middle East continues and inter-Korean relations remain strained. 송유진, 아리랑 News.
Across the border, Pyongyang played host to the first session of the Supreme People's Assembly this past weekend, during which Kim Jong-un was reappointed as the head of the political body. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
North Korea has reappointed Kim Jong-un as chairman of the State Affairs Commission in the leadership reshuffle that indicates tighter regime control. The North State media said Monday that the Supreme People's Assembly, the regime's rubber-stamp parliament, held the first meeting of its 15th term on Sunday. Kim was once again elevated to the top state post, while one of his closest aides, Cho Yong-un, replaced Choi Ryong-ae as president of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, a position equivalent to parliamentary speaker. Cho was also named first vice chairman of the State Affairs Commission, seemingly sealing his status as one of the most powerful figures in the regime. At the same time, Kim Jong-un's younger sister Kim Yo-jong was removed from the State Affairs Commission. Also notable was the language surrounding Kim Jong-un's re-election. The state media used terms such as the highest office and head of state, suggesting a stronger emphasis on Kim's formal institutional authority. In fact, reports of the re-election, unlike the past, dropped references to the state ideology of Kim Jong-un's predecessors, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, and instead used more elevated language focused on Kim Jong-un himself. The reshuffle also pointed to changes in the military and security bureaucracy. The Second Economy Commission, the body overseeing the planning and production of military goods, was placed under the cabinet. That suggests an effort to emphasize cabinet influence across the full economy, including the defense industrial sector. The Supreme People's Assembly sets out new appointments, legal revisions and budget approval, in line with last month's Party Congress, which sets out the regime's new strategic line every 5 years. The focus now shifts to the remainder of the session, and to whether Kim Jong-un's hostile two-state doctrine will further be reflected in constitutional revisions. Kim first laid out the concept at a year-end party meeting in late 2023, when he said the two Koreas were no longer moving towards reunification, but had become two hostile states. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, the parliament has paved the path for reform of South Korea's justice system by drawing a distinction between investigative and prosecutorial powers. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin explains.
South Korea's National Assembly has passed bills to reform the country's criminal justice system by separating investigative and prosecutorial powers. One bill led by the ruling Democratic Party establishing a new serious crime investigation agency passed on Saturday with 166 votes in favor and 1 against. The newly created investigation agency placed under the Interior Ministry will handle 6 major crime cases. Those cases are corruption, economic crimes, defense industry-related offenses, drug crimes, threats to national security, and cybercrime. Its jurisdiction also extends to offenses committed by officials in judicial and law enforcement institutions. This follows the passage of legislation on Friday creating a separate prosecution service. The bill faced strong opposition from members of the main opposition People Power Party, who held a filibuster and then boycotted the vote, arguing that the reforms undermine the justice system. With the boycott, the legislation passed with 164 votes in favor, 1 against. This bill states that the prosecution service will be limited to indictment functions and structured into a 3-tier system of central, regional, and local offices. Prosecutors will not be able to direct or supervise police investigations, and new legal provisions introduce stricter accountability, including dismissal as a disciplinary measure without formal impeachment processes. The 2 bills are set to formalize a system in which investigation and indictment are handled by separate independent bodies. The new judicial framework will take effect in October once the current prosecutor's office is officially abolished. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
BTS is back after an almost 4-year halt in group activities, and we have team coverage of its return, starting with our correspondent Park Eun-woo, who was on the ground this past weekend to cover, quote, the royal reunion between the K-pop sensation and its fans at a historic venue in downtown Seoul. To take a look.
The 7 members lit up Gwanghwamun Gate, the main gate of Gyeongbokgung Palace, snapping a nearly 4-year hiatus in style.
I can't believe the 7 of us are all standing together on this stage today. Wow. We know it's been a long way, right? Thank you for waiting for us.
The group opened with Body to Body, the opening track of their new album Arirang, blending a modern reinterpretation of the traditional folk song Arirang, performed by traditional singers. 7 more songs, including the album's lead track Swim, were performed live for the first time. The group capped the show with hits like Butter and Dynamite.
As long as you are with us, we always do our best to bring you great music and performances. Thank you!
RM, who had injured his ankle during rehearsals, performed with limited movement but showed no shortage of energy.
No matter what happens, we promise to keep swimming together. This is just the beginning. We love you, ARMY!
Fans waved their light sticks wildly, lighting the night atmosphere while dancing to the music, and some fans even burst into tears. BTS's agency said around 100,000 fans were on site.
It was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and I got to hear new songs from BTS as well as my favorite songs.
Amazing, and it's just fun to be like with everybody in Seoul, kind of getting together for a big cultural event.
The concert was also praised for running smoothly and safely.
Everybody knew what they were supposed to do. Nobody was trampling anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really good.
That was made possible by the help of some 10,000 personnel, including police officers, as well as thorough security checks at multiple entry gates. The event also extended far beyond Korea, with the concert streamed live on Netflix to audiences in over 190 countries, topping the Netflix movie charts in 77 countries. After successfully finishing the much-anticipated comeback show, BTS will now head to the US to remind the world the group is back with more performances along the way before flying back to Korea to kick off the biggest K-pop world tour ever, Arirang, across 34 cities, starting in Goyang. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
And BTS's comeback with its new album Arirang was celebrated across the capital city, much to the delight of its fans here and from those abroad. Our Cho Young-un covers the related events.
At Yeouido Hangang Park, the BTS City Arirang program welcomed weekend visitors. People strolling along the Han River naturally drifted into the pop-up venue, turning the park into a lively festival scene.
Today is very sunny, very good, and we knew that here we can do some picnic and have a nice time, and just suddenly we understood there's a BTS event here, very nice.
We took the Hangang bus today and thought Gwanghamon would be too crowded. We heard that Yeouido has been prepared nicely for playing with children, so we decided to come here.
At the Arirang playground, visitors can ride bicycles and swings that follow the beat of the tracks from the Arirang album, allowing them to really immerse themselves in the music.
Children and elderly visitors alike enjoyed the interactive elements as the park transformed into a vibrant space where K-pop and people came together. BTS fans also responded positively, noting that the citywide stamp rally, which takes them to landmarks across Seoul, offers a chance to discover other parts of the city.
Because I couldn't get tickets to either of the performances, I am happy that I could come here and enjoy something, at least something small. So I'm glad that I could share this with them, even though I won't really be at the concert today.
Landmarks across Seoul, including Dongdaemun Design Plaza, are being lit up in the colors of BTS's new album, with special lightning displays running through March 20 through April 19. Other areas such as Cheonggyecheon Stream and Yongsan Station are also being transformed into exhibition spaces, with more programs set to roll out in April as the group kicks off its world tour. The festival is organized in partnership with the Seoul Metropolitan Government, bringing together mobility, hospitality, finance, and food sectors to enhance the overall visitor experience. Cho Young-un, Arirang News.
And BTS has set a new milestone with its fifth album, ARIRANG, surpassing 4 million sales within 3 days of its release. According to Spotify, the album's lead track, Swim, ranked #1 on the daily chart for 2 days in a row following its release on Friday. Meanwhile, the song Body to Body claimed the second spot, marking another achievement with 2 songs from the same album dominating the global chart at the same time. On the retail front, BTS fans are fueling remarkable domestic consumption with their purchase of K-pop related products. Our Kim Jong-un takes a closer look.
These are characters inspired by BTS members, items that targeted fans visiting Seoul for the concert. Shelves filled with merchandise featuring their photos and names. This is K-Wave, a K-pop specialty store inside a duty-free shop in Myeongdong, one of Seoul's busiest shopping districts.
Items like magnets and puzzles kept selling out, even after repeated restocking. We've also seen a more diverse mix of customers, with more visitors from outside Asia, and the impact extended beyond our K-pop booth to nearby food and fashion sections.
Since early in the morning, fans have been coming in, eager to connect with their favorite artists.
I came to Korea for the free BTS concert. There are many places selling merchandise in Myeongdong, but I prefer this store because it's well organized and has official goods.
Dedicated entirely to K-pop merchandise, stores like this are becoming major destinations for fans visiting Korea. And the impact is visible in the numbers, with a sharp increase in visitors ahead of the concert. Foreign shopper numbers at the duty-free shop rose 32% from a week earlier, while BTS merchandise sales at a K-pop specialty store increased more than 5-fold. The impact reached beyond duty-free shops, with spending spilling over into the broader retail sector. At one convenience store chain, sales at 10 outlets near Gwanghwamun nearly quadrupled compared to the same days a week earlier. Stores located closer to the concert venue saw an even sharper increase, with sales jumping more than 6 times. This surge across the retail sector underscores the distinctive nature of fan-driven consumption.
Fan-driven spending is typically more intense, reflecting a stronger interest in Korea than that of general consumers. This demand is also spreading beyond BTS to other products with distinct Korean elements. If the trend continues, it could spread to general overseas travelers through social media, supporting long-term positive spillovers.
ARMY-nomics is now visible in the data, showing how a cultural phenomenon is translating into a tangible economic impact. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Tomorrow, temperatures will rise during the day, bringing a large temperature swing of around 15 to 20 degrees. So be sure to dress in layers and avoid catching a cold. Tomorrow we'll see partly cloudy skies nationwide. Jeju-do Island will remain mostly overcast, while the Chungcheong-do provinces and southern regions will gradually turn cloudy from the morning. Air quality will be a concern, with fine dust levels reaching bad in the capital area and parts of the central and southwestern regions. As for temperatures, Seoul will start the day at 7 degrees Celsius, Daejeon at 5 degrees, Jeju at 12 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 17 degrees, Chuncheon, Daegu, and Jeju all topping out at 18 degrees. Big temperature swings will continue for now, and rain is expected on Jeju-do Island from late tomorrow through Wednesday morning. That's all for Korea. Here's a look at the weather around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, during which we touch upon BTS's comeback concert this past weekend.